part of our planning together, weekend artist development, training sessions, fun and socials as well. So talking about socials, I'm delighted to introduce to you Rubbi Bhogal-Wood. Rubbi is a social media strategist and founder of two companies, Wakefield Digital and Social Enterprise Skills for All. Rubbi's motto is, "You control social media and not the other way around." Her purpose is to help clients and audiences feel empowered, confident and knowledgeable to grow their businesses using social media intentionally whilst also nurturing their mental health. So it was really important for us to have Rubbi here today to really look at genuine and authentic engagements between your practices and social media. And so, come on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much for inviting me today, and thank you for making the time to come in and chat with me as well. And I hope it will be a really engaging sort of session as well. I'm going to talk about how do you cultivate your creativity, your artistic community, whilst also really protecting where that sort of like space where it begins with your mental well-being, really. But bear with me as I do this. There is a point to this, and I can fully appreciate I have a very highbrow audience with me here today, but dare I ask, has anyone watched it? Has anyone watched Love is Blind season 2? Come, I need some support up here. Yeah, excellent. We shall talk afterwards. It is a very talkable sort of like a series, really. But the reason that I put this up here is because programs like this, and I'm going to talk about a couple of characters from it as well. What's happening around these particular characters can happen to anybody, any of us existing within the social media space. You don't have to have been on a reality TV show to sometimes feel as though you can be on this cliff edge between sort of like your artistic sort of like beginnings, but then also dipping your toe in the water to be able to reach and increase your visibility. And where does that put your mental well-being, so to speak? There are two characters here from the show, very big characters for different reasons. We have Deepti, who is an amazing goddess. Love the way she carries herself, the way that she stands up for her purpose in life, really. When I first sort of discovered her within the season, I looked at her Instagram following, and she was teetering around about the 30,000 mark, and you could tell that had increased because of the exposure of the show. On the train over here, I looked at it, she just topped the 900,000 mark. It's not going to be on. She had at least a million written up all over her when she was on that show. So on the one side, you've got this absolute sort of like a acceleration, really, of her exposure. Next to this character, so I'm not giving anything away, these two end up being together on the show. I didn't even explain the premise of the show. I just remembered. So the premise of the show, for those of you who don't know, you've got a group of men, a group of women, and they date together. They date one another, sight unseen, as it said in the show, in these pods. It is as lowbrow as that, as you're giggling, but it's so entertaining. And they make connections purely through conversation, and then it leads to one of them proposing to one another. And it's at that point that they then see each other for the first time. Then they go away, and they've got about 3 weeks before they actually get married. And then they decide at the altar if they're going to live happily ever after. I don't think I'm giving anything away, but when I say these two don't end up together. But Sheikh, the gentleman here, has had exposure to social media in a different way to that of Deepti. His behaviour on the show has been abhorrent, right? The way that he talks about women, extremely misogynistic. So of course, it's going to generate, as a show does on that scale, some conversations around it. But it's interesting because he's now had to come out to the point where he's saying, look, I get it, but please just bear in mind, I am human. And it's that dichotomy, really, that we can face. Again, like I was saying, you don't have to be on a reality TV show to suddenly feel this exhilaration, really, in terms of that exposure that you'll have. But then when you're putting yourself out there, right? So how do you then go about protecting your mental well-being? Now, what I'm hoping is that the team over in Chicago are helping both characters, and indeed all of them on the show, help navigate their way through social media. But for most of us, as we enter that space, to be able to highlight our creativity, the artistic nature of what we do, we can leave ourselves open. But what I hope to be able to do today is show you ways to be able to really reframe how you use social media in order to kind of build your artistic presence, establish those boundaries that can really help support your mental well-being, and in doing so, boosting your visibility, doing it in a really mindful way. And then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, won't we? You'll have to keep me on track, team. Yes, excellent. So this is my motto: you control social media, not the other way around. And this is really a thinking that I came to when I did my TEDx talk back in 2019. And it was about the relationship that I'd suddenly started discovering working within the social media sector with social media itself, and the impact that was having on my creativity, and detriment that it was having at the time. My perspective on social media runs contrary probably to what a lot of people say. You may hear this: you always have to be on, you have to be doing all of the features on every single channel. And to me, that's just so overwhelming that it's just not sustainable, especially if, as artists, in whichever sector, you're trying to nurture that and help that to flourish as well, and not lose that real essence from where it can bloom. So that's what I want to be able to show you, some of the ways in which I do that. But one of the things that I do when I go into, I talk a lot with young people in primary schools predominantly about mental well-being and social media. And I often ask them, what is social media? I love asking this question to young people because they go beyond just the obvious. So they often talk about not just the pictorial, the sort of like the image-led aspects of social. They actually talk about the social element of social. So if we look at this is just a quick conversation prism from an anthropologist called Brian Solis. And this is really a touch point, really, of all of the different social media channels, as they could be called, and then clustered around what you would do within them. The detail doesn't matter so much, really, but this is the important bit. It is the everyday user-led definition of social media is a lot bigger than we think it is. Take Instagram. Is anyone on Instagram here? Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but I even work in the sector, but I get a headache every time I see Adam Mosseri tell me there's an update on Instagram. It makes me want to run away. They've got at least five different features within there that you could possibly use. Now, each of those, to me, would require a bit of a mini content strategy. But you are, as I am, solo within your artistic community, right? So you would have to probably give up around about 90% of your time during the day just to do Instagram, right? So it's just not viable at all. And even if you'd be a social media manager in that case, but even as, people I know who are social media managers, they don't even do that. They have to pick and choose. You have to be able to create social media or your space within that based on what your values are, what your output, what your requirement, what your end sort of like purpose really is. And I think there's a lot of this, I want you to ponder over as this landscape grows, as it as we go through it, each week there's a new feature, a new release that comes out. What does that do? What does that growing landscape mean for your mental well-being and your creativity? So I don't know if you're aware, but again, this is something I discovered when I was part of my TED talk. But there are, all social media channels have been designed specifically with persuasive design techniques, really to try and train our minds and hook our attention. Because that ultimately is what it is, right? Our attention is the new oil. It's, data is the new gold. And our brains, because of the way they've been formulated, our brains are now craving that dopamine hit from every like, every comment, every share, every new follow. And what we essentially want is we want to continue seeking that new thrill, right? That's why, and they've been built purposefully to do this, that's why we keep scrolling. That's why we keep refreshing. I don't know if any of you watch this, The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Yeah? This really sort of exposed that thought process that is happening and had been happening over in Silicon Valley, where teams of, young men and women would sit there and their sole job was to be able to, or is still, to be able to create hook models within the social media platforms to keep us coming back for more. And the gentleman that you see there in the top right-hand corner is Tristan Harris. So he was part of the Social Dilemma documentary, but he wrote a paper back in 2016 on Medium, a blog piece, which essentially, exposed this happening. He was a design ethicist at Google at the time. He'd been at Stanford with the likes of, the people who'd set up Instagram and Zuckerberg at Facebook as well. And he really exposed this and really called mobile phones, but also very much social media channels, essentially as slot machines in our pockets. Constantly looking at it, constantly craving it. By default now, that's what we reach for. But again, I would ask you to just keep this in mind as we go through the second half of the presentation, really, is at what cost do you pursue a constructed version of what happiness is supposed to be on social media whilst trying to build and trying to help your creativity to flourish? Now, what I want you to be able to do is, and I definitely want to make it absolutely clear, I don't hate social media, right? I operate in the space, my livelihood is based on that landscape. And I see all of the wonderfulness that can emerge from that space when, artists or business owners or young people are able to start off their journey within that or reframe their journey within that based on more considered boundaries that perhaps they hadn't thought of before. And so what I want you to be able to do is to, as I talk about some of the advice that I want to be able to share with you really, is to how do you reclaim that social media space for yourself and your dreams and your artistry and your community and your well-being, and what role will it play as well? So whilst you're pondering on that question, here are some of my advice pieces, and remember they run contrary to what you might already hear in that space. And the first thing I always say to anybody is just keep it simple. There is this essence, everybody has an opinion. Even if they're not involved in your artistic community, they'll all say, oh, you should be on this channel, or you should be doing that, right? Man down the pub telling you what your Twitter strategy should be. And it's always, well intended, but just keep it simple. And I would say pick one channel, maybe even just one feature on that one channel, and just hone your skills on that. But important, not just your skills of posting on social and engaging, but it is about your confidence and being able to take those small steps into this big landscape that's out there that can easily, like we talked about with Deep Tea and Shake at the start, albeit tongue-in-cheek, but can be also very enveloping in a negative way. But if done so on your terms, at your pace, it can be such a brilliant space to be in. So I'd encourage you to keep it simple and go slow. And the second point really will be to kind of show off the you-ness of you, really. We all, no matter which sector you're in, I've worked with a number of different clients in a variety of categories. We all do. There's always somebody else who's doing something that we do, right? But nobody can take away the you-ness of you. That's always going to be special. Your uniqueness, your USP, your essence, right? And again, it can be very easy as you embark on social. Has anyone ever compared themselves to anybody else? Yeah, totally. It's just part of that landscape. You cannot help but compare yourself to somebody else in that space. Oh, they're better than me, they're bigger than me, they've got more clients, they're earning more revenue, which is why this essence of owning and remembering the you-ness of you, or this uniqueness, sorry. Ooh. Oh no, what have I done? This uniqueness, that is going to be your anchor. When you feel lost and as though you're floating around in this crazy space, that's going to be central to bringing you back. And again, very much part of your boundary setting. I've been talking about this particular point with a lot of clients recently, and they feel as though social media has become very kind of shouty. You know, we're being shouted at a lot of the time. It's very much a one-way conversation, sometimes at particularly high volume. And I think that's because of the nature of some of the features that are coming out. So if you look at something like Instagram, they're obviously pushing Reels a hell of a lot. You know, you open up Reels and it takes up your entirety of your screen. They're short form, they're very quick, and they are often, if we think about some of the audio. So has anybody watched the Anna Delvey? Yeah, excellent. So there is a line at the minute that's doing the rounds on Reels, you know, I will not put up, I can't remember the way. I don't, oh, thank you. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for you. Except she's like German Hungarian. But anyway, not weirdly American or whatever I was trying to do. So, but the point is, when you're hearing that and others, so for, you know, there are lots of examples, it can feel as though it's a one-way conversation. But for us who want to be able to build a community and build a space on there, we have to remember to be able to engage. Importantly, to really listen to our community as well and not get so caught up in these trends that we have to hop onto because we think that they'll, you know, make us viral or whatever, or give us, you know, increased visibility. But again, at what cost? Because your community are the ones who are going to support you, who are going to be helping that word of mouth aspect. You know, they're the ones who are adding credibility to what you do. And again, I think it's really easy to forget about that beautiful relationship you're trying to build. Love a bit of Dolly Parton. This quote to me, the way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you've got to put up with the rain, is the fact that it's going to take you time, no matter where you are on your journey, to reach a point where you feel really comfortable with your relationship with social media. So you know what sort of content flies for your content, for your audience, you know what works, what doesn't, which formats you feel most comfortable in. You're looking at your data and your analytics as well, because that tells a story, and I think you shouldn't ignore that. But it can take on average up to about 8 months for you to really feel that, oh, I'm in my groove here. So what I would say is be kind to yourself as you're going on your journey through social media, because it's very easy to get caught up in comparisonitis and all of that sort of like self-doubt and imposter syndrome. But just know that there is going to be a beautiful rainbow at the end of all of that. And it is coming and it will happen. And my last few points really are to, again, this is linked to the you-ness of you, really, but it's that success follows passion. Creating content. So who here creates content regularly? Or just, I won't even say regularly, just who creates content on social? I'm seeing a few nods, right? It takes time. right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes creativity. A lot of thinking goes into that. And you can sometimes end up, again, losing yourself in what you think you ought to be doing. And what happens is that your passion for what you do dwindles. And that's when you start resenting what you do or resenting social media, and then you start stepping back and your visibility drops in there. And it's like this negative spiraling relationship. But again, another anchor. How many anchors can we have? I don't know about this analogy, but anyway, it's like one of those love locks on a bridge. I'm thinking this wasn't in the script. Anyway, it's another anchor that's really going to bring you back and ground you. It's important. Keep that passion burning. We all know, right? Video is big. I'm sure I was saying that about 3 or 4 years ago, but it is big this year. With Reels, they are pushing it. The algorithm is favoring that type of content. But like I say, with most things, do it on your terms. So I had the picture there is of a post that I did that was talking about Reels. But it makes my skin crawl a little bit. When Reels first came out, there was the dancing and the pointing. Okay, my first video was a bit of pointing, but it did really well. But it can get really icky, as we say, right? So I always say, look, pick video, pick an aspect of video, but do it on your terms. So for something like Reels, you don't have to be singing around, bopping around, pointing. I'd say the landscape for content or quality of content in that feature, I've seen a shift in that emerging in the last month or so. It's starting to become a little bit more developed, and people are moving away from the easy aspect of that content creation. There is so much you can do within a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. So just ditch the ick, do it on your terms, come back to your passion, come back to your community, honor those aspects, and you will start to find yourself entering this new and more preferred space, or the power of video, and being able to leverage that on your terms, which I think is really, really important. Don't start going down that route where you cringe before you start filming something. It will vibe off you. Your audience will know. They'll know. And then my last sort of few points are really this aspect of storytelling. Again, remember when I said social media has become very, very shouty? A good way to be able to counteract that is the storytelling aspect of your artistic journey, your values. Everything that pours into what you do is a story. And we're all made of stories, and they're all different types of stories. So these are a couple of people that I follow who do storytelling in their own way. Now we have DJ Fat Tony. I'll give you a few moments to read what he says there. And then turn to the person next to you and try and say the word. Yeah, right? Good luck trying to say it correctly again. So you've got storytelling in this beautiful, humorous way, right? He brings both, on the whole, very funny topics together, but he can get deep as well. But then you've got the storytelling aspects, those moments where, through, for instance, Eckhart Tolle, moments that make us stop, moments that make us consider as well. But there are spaces, there is storytelling that can be prevalent within the artistic community. No doubt about it. It can translate onto something like social media or Instagram. So Inquisitive is an artist that I follow. His drawings to me are beautiful, not just aesthetically, but mainly because of the story that he's telling behind those. So as a Sikh woman, his stories, and he is Sikh, also lend themselves to a lot of the religious readings and a lot of our values and outlook on life. And that's where I find that connection, as will your audience, with your values and your views and your opinions. But again, it's the storytelling aspect, that two-way relationship that's been built. And then there are aspects such as my storytelling, which is through help and empowerment and How can I then aid people, business owners, artistic communities, journeys within social media in a way that upholds their values and their principles? And I think a key takeaway point really is that the marketing, whatever you want, it was the marketing sweet spot, the content sweet spot, exists between your beautiful talents and that of what your community and what they need and what they want as well. And that it's where they cross over. That's where that beautifulness can happen, really. And finally, what I want you to be able to take away as well is people don't want to be sold to on social. As consumers, you'll experience that, right? So when you're creating content, you've both got your creator hat on, but you've also got your consumer hat on, right? In terms of consumption of content. People are not on there to buy goods and services in the first instance. That's almost like the byproduct of what happens beforehand, which is that sense of magic, which is that sense of storytelling, which is the sense of connection and relationships. So always remember your content leaning against the principle of being value-led, purpose-driven. If you did that, along with the various love lock anchors I talked about, you're not going to go far wrong. And my final point really is, a lot of what I've said, you may have already been thinking anyway, but sometimes the power of action comes from having somebody hear somebody else saying it. So if you were seeking permission or validation to own social media on your terms rather than it trying to control you, then I hope this presentation has really given you that. And I am open to questions in a moment, but two things. If what I was talking about resonates with you, let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can see my handle up on the screen. But also, I've got a very comprehensive downloadable guide, which is on my website. And the address is there as well. Again, helping you to increase your impact on social, but all done on your terms as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was really insightful, engaging, super engaging session. I wanted to ask if anyone had any questions from the room in class.
Nope.
Yes. And then we also go to online at the back, Sydney. So let's start with Anaya. You want to go? You're going to have to speak into the mic so people online can hear you as well. So I'm going to just pass this around. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
How long do you spend online and how long do you spend creating content a week?
Oh, a week. So it's a really good question. So my app on my phone will probably tell me time online, a good few hours, I would say. It's not extensive because I've set the boundaries for myself. So things like switching off my phone or not looking at my phone after a certain hour, the fact that I will time when I go online, because otherwise what happens is I'm susceptible, as is everybody. You open up the app and you go on for one particular reason, and then like an hour later, you're like, I've forgotten what I went on for. I'm sure it was something. It'll come back to me. By that point, I don't know what you've consumed. So what I use is the take a break feature on Instagram, and I've set mine to 10 minutes. It is pretty astounding how much content you can consume in 10 minutes. It's worrying, right? So if you were to then times up by 6, you're like, it's no wonder when you walk away from your device, your mind is just blown, and not often in the positive way as well. And we know from a lot of research that's been done, it takes 20, 30 minutes for you to almost reset your mind and come back to the job in hand as well. So not very often, but that's only because I've learned through trial and error to set boundaries. In terms of creating content, what I tend to do is, so for instance, today, I've been creating little snippets of content. I say creating, I've been capturing a bit of my journey here and around the building. On my train journey home, I will then look to put, which is about, I think about 45 minutes, I'll then put together a reel and maybe a couple of ideas for some posts. So what I'm doing is I'm using my time effectively in order to create that content. What I sometimes advise to my clients is that they set aside, literally block it off in your diary, like an hour or two a week, and just plan your content, get it out there. So have a huge brain dump of creativity. Some aspects you'll come back to, some you won't. Some write in a notebook, some write on Google Docs, others on Post-it notes. You're likely to lose them. But whatever works for you, just get it out there in a set time frame so that when you then come to share content on your terms, you're not sat there going, right, be creative, think of something amazing, because I'm yet to meet somebody who can do that in the moment. Did that answer your question? Sort of.
It creates about 3 or 4.
I did. Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
My question is, if we start with one channel or one platform, what would you recommend to build something complementary or more resilient after that, especially for, in the case of Instagram, when it went down?
Yeah, right. So it's a really good point. We don't own those social media channels, but one thing we do own in a way is marketing terms is our email marketing list, right? That's where building up that list enables you to have that one-to-one dialogue with people on a frequency that you set and you decide. That's where you can start. The best sort of newsletters enable you to really storytell. It's so personal as well. So I would say if it was something complementary to your one channel, that it's not necessarily another social media channel. Think about the diversity really of your marketing, not just your digital marketing, but your marketing. But I would probably say something like your email list. It's really important. That's never going to go down. You always own that. Yeah, and in terms of if it were to be a social media channel, again, it depends on who you are looking to reach and why you're looking to reach them as well. So when I was talking about how it takes on average about 8 months to really get a handle on your social, even at that point, ask yourself, well, do I need to do video, or do I need to do, I don't know, stories or Pinterest or whatever it might be? And why would I want to do it? What is the end result going to be? For what purpose am I doing that? You want to reach more people, you want to sell more, you want to do more event-led stuff, whatever it might be, just ask yourselves those questions first, rather than thinking you have to do that as well. As soon as you add on another social media channel, your content creation, not necessarily doubles, but it certainly increases as well. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any questions online? Yeah? Okay.
Hello, this is from online. We've got one saying, thanks so much, Rubbi. Would love to know your thoughts/feelings on TikTok.
Just generally? Okay. Well, it came to the forefront, I think, probably during lockdown when parents, much to the dismay of their young children, discovered it. I think it's a viable space for the artistic community to be able to be in as well. But much like, because it's, Reels is a direct copy of TikTok, it's about the sort of content that you would want to be able to put on there. How are you sharing that? And again, leaning on that storytelling aspect. Again, it doesn't have to be dancing or singing. If you look at there's a wide variety of people on there, whether it is the artistic community, whether it's, I don't know, say within the cooking, sort of like sector. Often what you'll find is there's a lot of, there's room there to be able to show people your process as well. I think it's a lot more forgiving. It's almost like a behind the scenes sort of like aspect. And again, it doesn't have to be sales focused at all. Used in the right way, I think it's a viable option.
Thanks, Rubbi. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Yeah. Thank you very much for your brilliant talk. I joined Instagram last June with a lot of resistance. some fear.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I did, and it's grown a small community, very, very, very small community. I'm an artist educator, so I've got an artistic practice and regular workshops.
Okay.
So what I'm looking at the moment is this sort of problem about having a lot of different stuff. So my grid looks really sort of incoherent.
Okay.
And I think a bit difficult to sort of capture what I'm about. But that's what I'm about. I do lots of different things.
Yeah.
Different workshops,
Yeah.
different types of art. So I've just been sort of capturing what I'm doing without any thought, just sort of posting every day, without any sort of planning or strategy. And then I have comparisonitis, a really bad case of it. And I look at other people's grids and I think, gosh, that looks nice and clean. I can really grasp what's happening there.
Mm.
And I don't think it's the case with mine, but I guess that's okay. But I wonder if you come across that a lot with creatives who have, obviously, for bread and butter work, we do a lot of teaching.
Yeah.
And then my own practice sort of fits in between that.
So it's trying to find that balance between what could be quite a dichotomous situation, right?
It sort of feeds, it all links together.
Yeah, it all makes sense, and it's all part of who you are. And like you're saying, you're owning the fact, or I would encourage you to continue owning the fact that you're a multitude of things. And sometimes when I see grids that look really beautiful, and they're also artistically done, and on a big artistic, not like an artist, little artistic or whatever, it sometimes can be style over substance. But what you've just told me, you're building your community. And even though you seem to be posting, I say, authentically, organically, from the heart, that's creating a difference. You're building something right there so that you know it's working. If it is a case of you want it to look a little bit more coherent, then it could well be that you decide that there are certain colorways or templates. So I use templates on mine sometimes, as you might have seen. Let me get back. There. So sometimes, a lot of mine is about education as well as say it's just pictorial aspects. I work with young people. I have a very different view on social media to a lot of people. How do I get that across in a distinctive manner? Well, sometimes what I'll do is I will lean on more of the visual aspect to provide that recognition point for my audience. Go, oh, right, that's Rubbi's post. I get that. But it's the essence within it. It's the substance of the caption. It's the substance of the showing up on my terms. It is the depth of the content and the information that I'm sharing that really is pulling all of that together. The aesthetic stuff is almost secondary, but sometimes it can be viewed in a primary setting, like that's the most important thing. But one of the things that we have seen over what has changed significantly for Instagram over the last few years, I would say, is that your grid doesn't necessarily have to be that structured. It's a lot more forgiving. And I think to then have to sometimes force your creativity into a rigid, I must do that sort of post today, and I've got to have that kind of cover on that one, and then it's got to be that. I've been there, I've done it. It constricts your creativity. So what I'd probably say is what you're doing sounds like it's working already. Maybe a little bit more fine-tuning in terms of maybe allocating an aesthetic filter, maybe some of the topics that you talk about. So if you were to theme your content, how would you want that visually shown on your grid? So it might be templated, and can you do that through something like Canva? Even if it's free to sign up with an email, they have some beautiful stuff that can get you going. And I think it's like £10 a month, I think, if you wanted to go for a pro version, which then opens up a whole new world of palettes and all sorts. It's a good starting point there to give you those little anchor points that people go, aha, it is. And what's your name? Pui. It is Pui's content. I get it. That's her. That's so her. It looks like her. It feels like her. And then you've got the wonderful substance of the caption beneath that, really continue to cement that relationship you're building. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, good.
That's incredible. And I think if
you don't mind me expanding on that a little bit, I was, in terms of your work and thinking about the content driving it, if your workshops are so dynamic and active, it could be that that does suit the more video content, but then you use these templates to say, new reel or new video in your workshops, whether they're highlight stories, and then you've got mainly, grid for your practice. So you kind of do use different functions to separate them, but then use the template tools as the signposts, maybe. I have one thought, sorry.
It just prompted from your response then, in terms of investment, whether that be time or money, because you mentioned about templates and subscriptions to different services that help build content on social media. Do you have any guide or recommendations? I know it might be different case to case, but what would you say is a reasonable percentage allocation, for example, of time/resources in terms of money?
In terms of money?
Yeah, so like a subscription to a template building service.
In terms of, I've never been asked that question before. That's a good one. Okay. Well, so for something like, what are you going to get from it, right? How much value are you going to get from something? So for instance, I've got enough from, say, Canva that I don't pay for the paid for version. I've got enough there within my remit, within my limited artistic scope. It suits me, right? And I get what I need. And then, like you were saying, I then flex between some of my content in terms of the themes that I have and where I'm going to push them. If you were to invest, again, like I say, it's the value that you're going to get from it. There are loads of great, free, very professional tools out there that you can use. So if you were to create something like, so for Reels, you don't have to create Reels in the app. It can be a little bit faffy, but you might want to look at something like InShot, it's free. CapCut, it's free. iMovie is I find that a little bit clunky. InShot's my preferred one. Again, I use all of these and they're all free options. Sometimes when you're bootstrapping your organization or, your creativity, you've got to be smart in where you decide to put that money. But the good news is there's loads of great stuff out there for free. If you were to invest into the email marketing that I talked about, if you've got MailLite, but also things like MailChimp, which don't cost a huge amount of money, because the trade-off from having developed that one-to-one relationship where you can go into depth about your workshops, what was some of the feedback, the testimonials. That's where you can then start to really nurture that. And the value that you're paying out for that, which would be, I don't know, about £12, £15 a month. The payback on that is covered. But it's the balance. What's important to you? What do you need from your creativity? What are your goals? And also remembering a lot of these subscription services you can turn off and on, which I think is great, from month to month. They're recognizing that we don't want to be locked in long term. We done? Yeah?
We've got another question online.
Oh, yeah.
Just sneaking in there, the last one.
So question from Zoe. As an artist, putting your work out there can feel vulnerable and exposing.
Right.
And IG can often feel like a judgmental space. Do you have any advice on how to deal with this and keep it fun? Thanks.
I think it comes back to, great question, Zoe. I think it comes back to what I was saying about your anchors and your values. And it's that recognition that you're never going to please everybody, right? And not everyone's going to like you or enjoy or appreciate your work. That's okay. It's that mindset. It is a lot about mindset, and it's saying to yourself, I accept that, I respect that. You do you. I'm going to keep doing me, and I know that what I'm doing, because it's driven by passion, means something, is important to me. And look, I'm bringing along a community. Your followers will increase. The important thing is your engagement. Followers, you can buy followers. It's engagement. That's where you'll start to nurture it. And so take heart from the fact that there are people out there who do appreciate your art and who will continue to support you and continue to talk about you so positively. There will always be haters. You have to be able to create that mindset and those boundaries to not get caught up in their story. Stick to your path.
Really, what a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much. I'm sure you all agree that that was absolutely incredible, inspirational. I kind of want to start a reel now and work out what it is.
Thank you so much.
We'll all be posting tomorrow, I'm sure. Or just having a more considered, thoughtful approach to it, which is the main message. And to get that storytelling in there as well.
Yeah.
So on that note, thank you so much for coming to the second day of putting together. Thanks also to the team, so Bella, Alice, Jenny, and Hannah, and the Art House folk as well, for their generous support. We've got more sessions on the 1st and the 2nd of April, which you're also more than welcome to and the Art House. Otherwise, thank you so much for your
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.